Good morning, grade 11. I'm moving on now to 1.3. Refer to the cartoon below showing an economic indicator of development. So when it comes to development, here is development geography. You are supposed to familiarize yourself with the jargon, the words, the key terms that we use in as far as development geography is concerned. And one such term is something to do with economic growth, the gross domestic product. These are some of the terms that you have to familiarize yourself with. So when you look at this, we are looking at GDP, which is the total market value of goods and services produced by a country within a year. This is what we refer to as the gross domestic product. It's within the country within a year. Total market value of goods and services produced by the citizens of a country within a year. So that's what gross domestic product is all about. GDP, the acronym is gross domestic product. What is happening? Is this human development? Could it at least get something? Could I at least get something to eat? So when you look at this, of course, this is what is happening in as far as economic growth is concerned. But who is it benefiting? Is it benefiting everyone? So this is something that is coming out of this cartoon. Of course, we have not yet started to analyze it, but we are saying now, besides the promised GDP growth, but we still have a lot of people that are living in poverty. So this is what comes to your mind. We are just analyzing. We haven't started answering the question. So we are saying now, besides the promised economic development that we can see in terms of infrastructure, that we can see in terms of everything that is here, which denotes economic growth, we still have a challenge whereby people are still living in poverty. Can you see? Is this human development? That's what arises for people to ask this question. Is this human development? Which means economic development is not actually focusing also on social development. Remember, development is a multi-dimensional term. It's not supposed to focus merely on the economy, but it's supposed to also focus on the social aspect of development. In as much as we want to develop the economy, some of the benefits should transcend on the human side. We want people income to be improved. We want them to have access to basic services. We want them to have the better and quality of life. That's basically what we want. So when it talks about economic development per se, we are saying now, in as far as this cartoon is concerned, it's solely focusing on growing the economy, but forgetting who is contributing to that growth of the economy, the human resource, the people that are involved. Is this development? Okay. Could it at least get something to eat? Which means people are still poor, regardless of the economy growing. Who is benefiting? The poor are still in a situation whereby they do not have access to food, they cannot afford. It's not an issue only of access, but it's an issue of affordability as well. So that is the challenge, the dilemma that is there in as far as economic growth is concerned. So it is supposed to be comprehensive. Let it include even the social part of development. So this cartoon actually, it gives you the multidimensionality of development. That development in essence is multidimensional. It does not include only the economic part, but it also involves the environmental part, because we are saying the development is taking place within our Mother Earth. But if we develop or we utilize resources at the pace that we are doing, is it going to be sustainable in the long run? Will the future generations also benefit? That's now coming in with the issue of sustainable development. The social aspect, we want also the benefits to transcend towards the social side as well. Let's go with the question, because this topic is very interesting. We can talk the whole day. What is GDP growth? So what it is the increase in the total value of goods and services produced by a country within a year. So growth is denotes the increase, but what GDP is not going to change. The total value of goods and services produced by a country in a year. So that's growth of the total value of goods and services produced by a country within a year is what we define as our gross domestic product growth. That is your GDP. State the importance of GDP growth of a country. Okay, what is the importance now? There will be an increase in the economy. Of course, it's likely to help the economy to develop. That's basically what we are talking about. It also indicates an increase in formal employment and formal business. We are saying now, since the economy is growing, we are likely to have more people being employed. We are likely to have more companies operating as well. That's why we say it indicates an increase in formal employment and also formal business. Policymakers and banks can make future plans to grow the economy further. These are some of the importance actually, but we only need one. I've given you two. Comment on the relationship between GDP growth, and human development. What is the relationship if there is 1.3.3? Okay. So what the general relationship, or I would say more like an assumption, is the GDP growth should increase the living standards and the quality of life of people. Because the moment the GDP growth is, remember we have said that there's increase in formal employment, which means people also are employed. The moment they're employed, which means they've got money. Of course, when they've got money, they're likely to improve. They can afford, they can actually buy whatever helps them to live a decent life. So that's why we're saying the GDP growth increase the living standards and the quality of life. Okay. An increase in living standards and the quality of life leads to further GDP growth, because these same people that now have got income, they are the same people that support the industries, which means they help also to grow the economy. They also contribute to GDP growth when these people are employed. Since we have said that there's an increase in formal employment and business, which means when they are now employed, they have an income, they can also supporting the business within the country, which can result in GDP growth. So GDP growth increases the living standards and quality of life of the people, and an increase in the living standards and quality of the people leads to further GDP growth. That is the relationship that is there. Okay. Then number 1.3.4, how does the cartoon portray a negative impact of GDP growth on human development? This is what is supposed to happen, but what is portrayed here is what we are commenting on. Remember, I was making my remarks there. Okay. So we are saying, despite the GDP growth that is shown here, there's still many people that are living in poverty. You can see there, he said, could I at least get something to eat? Is this human development? So that's basically, that is what is portrayed there, that despite the GDP growth, there are still many people that are languishing or that are living in poverty. Like you can see the comments, could I at least get something to eat? Which means these people are poor. They don't have access to food. The quality of life is very poor. That's the relationship that is depicted. We are commenting based on what is written or what is shown on the cartoon. That's basically what we are saying. That GDP growth, there are still many people that are living in poverty. Besides the GDP growth that we have, there are still people that are living in poverty. So that is 1.3.4. Let's move on to the next one, 1.3.5. It reads, explain why this negative impact in your answer in 1.34 is prevalent in most countries. Why is it common in many countries? That countries' economies are growing, but people are still poor. Countries' GDP growth is there in a country, but we still have people that are suffering. Number one, we have got unequal distribution of wealth in a country, which is what we refer to as the Gini coefficient. We are having a situation whereby the rich are continuing to be rich, where the poor are continuing to be poor. The rich, what do they have? They've got access, they are controlling the resources and everything. So the Gini coefficient is actually expanding the gap between the rich and the poor. Okay, that's basically what is happening. So we have got an equal distribution of wealth in a country. That is why this negative, okay, is prevalent in most countries. That's number one. That's why besides the growth in the GDP, people are still poor, because we do not have the same access to the distribution of wealth in a country. Okay, the GDP growth focuses on money and not on developing the social capital in a country. We are saying that it is economic orientated. It's focusing more on the economy, but not on the welfare of the people. That's basically what we are talking about. That's why it's still prevalent, of course, because despite the GDP growth, we still have people that are poor, because it has got more focus on the economy as compared to the development in terms of the social aspect of development. Remember, we say development by its nature is multidimensional. It's not only economic oriented. You have to consider the environment. You have to consider the social aspect as well. That's basically what you're talking about. What you can also include is the social tension, as the poor are marginalized. The poor are marginalized. That's another problem that is there. Then we also have the GDP growth that depletes natural resources and robs people of their livelihoods. This is something that is also contributing to that. Let's move on to the next one. Suggest strategies to improve human development in developed countries. Okay, in developing countries. What can we do to ensure that people have a better quality of life? What can we do to make sure that people have got the better standards of living? That's what we are being asked to put across as suggestions or strategies. So the first thing that we can actually do is to improve the level of literacy by making education more accessible. Education for all. Education for all. That's basically what we are saying, that let's make education accessible, because the idea is the more educated people are, the better their skills, and also the better their chances of having an income through the utilization of their skills. There's someone who once told me that the more knowledge that you have, the more money you are likely to generate for yourself. But the less knowledge you have, the more money you're likely to spend. You understand? So, which means when you have a chance, you have to make sure that you learn, because learning results in skills development, upskilling. Then you are creating more value for yourself, which actually helps you to get more income. Okay, so you improve the levels of literacy by making more education more accessible. Then number two, we can introduce a variety of skills programs to make more people employable in the formal and informal sectors. I think if you can ask around the South African industry, you find that some of the companies, when they employ unskilled people, as interns, or the unskilled people, they are also paid by the government for upskilling those people, because when they employed, they were not skilled. So they also actually claim money from the government for training those people. So this is a way of making sure that you upskill, you give these people skills, because even though they were employed as unskilled, but after a certain period of time, you would find that there will be specialists or skilled personnel in their profession. So this is also what is happening in as far as them upskilling. Of course, introducing a variety of skills programs to make more people employable in formal and informal sectors. Of course, the issue of interns, that's another way. Of course, provision of services to improve the quality of life. We are saying now, let's improve providing for services such as maybe health services, in terms of infrastructure and all those things. There are some areas there's poverty because they are not accessible. Let's build infrastructure. Maybe let's also build toilets. Let's give them electricity. Those are basic things that we are saying can also actually improve the social aspect of development. We can also improving the gender inequality index, so that more women are represented in politics, education, high level jobs, through affirmative action, to make sure that we also try to represent both gender, okay, to reduce the gender inequality index, okay. Improving the food security in a country to reduce poverty. That's what we are also using. I think we are adopting the use of GMOs, genetically modified food, to increase production and make sure that people really have access to food. We are improving food security in a way. So this takes us to the end of the question that covers economic growth, that focus on economic area of development. Thank you so much.